Hey everybody, I'm Invisible Katana, and this is my review, spoiler-free review, for the Ant-Man film. Now, I finally got the chance to sit down and watch it yesterday. I actually went and saw it with my girlfriend. I guess everyone's seen it by now, so when we finally went to see it, I think we were like 2 out of maybe 8 people, if there are even 8 people, in the theater, so that was kind of funny. We also saw it at like 11:40, so that could have played a part in it, but I think everyone who wants to see this movie has kind of seen it now. We actually went to see it in 3D, and it actually looks pretty cool in 3D. I always think the movies look pretty good in 3D, and I think Marvel movies actually look really good. Marvel movies and like CG films are probably the best movies to see in 3D. I mean, the whole 3D fad is kind of gone now anyway. Like, even at this movie, they had like no 3D trailers, which was surprising because they typically had it's like half and half, but it was like, nope, 3D is basically dead and gone. It's only kids movies and Marvel movies, and that was it. So we saw it in 3D. It was definitely pretty good. I enjoyed the film for sure. I think it's the second funniest film that Marvel has done after Guardians of the Galaxy, and I'm sure some people may argue with that, but I just think Guardians of the Galaxy that was definitely meant to be that really silly and funny film, and that was obvious from the very first trailer. It's like, this is meant to be the comedy movie inside of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it definitely is. But Ant-Man is definitely a close second for me. They definitely has some funny characters, some really, really silly moments. Some I'll talk about in this, some I'll talk about in like my spoiler video. But it was definitely funny. Like, I love the way they did it. It was like, here's some good jokes here and there, thrown in a lot of different ways too. A lot of different characters made jokes. A lot of different things happened. Some jokes were just like normal jokes. Some jokes actually mattered because they were talking about the Avengers and like making jokes about them and stuff like that. So there was a lot of silly stuff in there that I really really enjoyed. The main story itself was definitely pretty well done, I thought personally. It has like a nice little thing which they haven't done. They've only done it one other time, but they do sort of like a prologue, like a tiny prologue scene, and then they do like the Marvel flip book thing where they show like the Marvel Studios logo. So that was the first time they've done that since Guardians of the Galaxy. So like another minor connection there, but that was a pretty cool scene, and I'll explain that in the spoiler section because it was something I didn't expect. So it's not something that you could find out unless you kind of look it up. So I'll save that for the spoiler section. But it goes through the main story. Of course, we all know that it's, instead of it being Hank Pym, who's the original Ant-Man, they are passing the torch on to Scott Lang, who is the second Ant-Man. Even in the comic books, he's still the second Ant-Man. And so we have this storyline where he is basically picked up by Hank Pym, and it's like, I've kind of been looking at you, I've seen what you can do and stuff. So I need you to steal something for me. And of course, you can kind of infer this from the trailers, but they're going against the main villain, whose name I cannot remember at all right now. But um, he's the guy who's actually the main character in the show The Strain, which I watch. So it was kind of funny seeing him as the villain in the show. Also, he's completely bald and he has like a full head of hair in the show. So for me, it was like, this looks really weird. He's like a bad guy and he's bald. It's like total opposite from the father character he plays in The Strain. So he's the main villain, and it's like he was sort of he was like the apprentice to Hank Pym when Hank Pym was still working and doing everything he'd done before he really retired. And so he becomes the main villain, and he's the Yellow Jacket, which is actually something that Hank Pym becomes in the comic books when he decides he doesn't want to be Ant-Man, and he becomes a bit more vigilante than superhero, and he starts like beating people up, and I believe he uses a certain type of gun. I can't remember exactly what it is. I think it's like a shrink gun, but he didn't tell anybody that. It was like his way of being a bad guy. It was like, oh, I just shoot them and then they disappear, and everyone thinks he's like evaporating people. And it's like, no, he actually just shrunk them down. It's like, oh, he's still super nice. He's just doing this persona. In the film, though, it's just a total villain thing, and it's just like, nope, this is a bad guy. Nothing to do with Hank Pym except for he doesn't want it to happen. And I thought it was really cool. That was one thing I really enjoyed about this, is that the costumes looked really, really cool. Because obviously, pretty much for anyone, they aren't going to have their actual comic book costumes, except for maybe Thor and like Captain America and obviously Hulk, if you want to count it as a costume, his ripped up pants. Um, Even Scarlet Witch, they don't have it exactly down. Like she doesn't have like the gold or anything. She has those little shock things, but they're all black. Like everything is black, and it's like a tiny little bit of red for the Black Widow symbol. But even she doesn't have like the gold they have in the comic books. Um, so in this one, I thought the costumes looked really cool. I love the Ant-Man look. I like that one way more than the comic book version, which I think is okay. But for some reason, I just thought it looked really, really sweet in this. Like the costume they have just looks really cool. The helmet is actually, um, it's really similar, but it definitely has some huge differences. And it looks, like I said, I think it looks way cooler. The yellow jacket thing is like leagues beyond what it is in the comic book, because that's just a black and yellow suit, and he has like giant shoulder things sticking. They're basically like spikes. They aren't pads. They're just like right here, and they just stick up, and that's it. So the yellow jacket in this film definitely looks way cooler, a million times deadlier, because he has like, you know, the lasers and stuff, which is all in the trailer, so that's, you know, no spoilers there. But you know, he's got lasers and crap, and he's flying around and stuff, and it definitely looked cool to me. I thought visually they look really cool. The fight scenes were definitely pretty sweet. I really enjoyed all the different fight scenes. There was comedy within the fight scenes, like the scene that was revealed in the trailer with Thomas the Tank Engine, and the Yellow Jacket thinks he's about to get hit by a train, and he's freaking out because, you know, he's super tiny and it's like the size of a giant train, really. And then it hits him, and it's like, oh, because he didn't really know that he had that he still had the same strength. He didn't really realize that. So I thought that was a funny little moment. But the action is definitely cool. They really utilize the Ant-Man abilities, where Ant-Man, when he's in fights with people, he'll shrink and grow back and forth, back and forth. It's like, all right, I know what I have to do. I know where I have to get to. Shrink, go big if someone grabs him. You know, it's like, oh crap, I'm not strong enough to get out of this. Grow big because they can't hold me anymore. It's just like really cool stuff that makes perfect sense. Like, you know, if you're being grabbed by someone and you're just not strong enough, just grow big and they can't hold you anymore. Or if you're on someone's back or something, you can just, you know, if they're as strong as you or as fast as you, better tech or whatever, you can just grow big and like weigh him down or something like that. So they definitely utilize him growing and shrinking. Like every single fight is just like big, small, big, small. So it's utilized more than enough. Not too much. I think it's utilized perfectly. Like he's fighting different people. It's like, all right, I gotta shrink here to dodge this and grow to, you know, hit this guy, or stay small and just punch people that can't see me and stuff like that. But then you fight someone else who can shrink just like him. He has to, you know, change his tactics. So it's definitely really amazing. I love the choreography of it and the way they had it. Visually, it looked amazing. Like when he first shrunk down, I love the way they did it, because I watched some, I think it was like a Watch Mojo thing, and it was like they used like macro lenses or micro lenses, something like that, one of those two things. And basically it zooms into everything super, super far, and it makes everything else look huge. So it's not CG, it's like they actually use cameras to make things look the way that they do. And they, of course, use CG to make Paul Rudd look, you know, super tiny. But they actually film stuff and just zoom in really, really far with the camera. And it looks amazing. Like, I love the way that they did that. Pretty much everything just looks really cool. Like, whenever they zoom in the stuff, super tiny, it looks really sweet. Him shrinking and growing is really cool, especially when they kind of do it for the first time, which is like in the trailer, where they show like the different layers. It's almost like someone moving at super speed, where they have like the waves behind them a little bit. I like when they do that, and they do that pretty much every time he shrinks and grows. It's just when it's in normal speed, it's just like, and it's super fast, so you don't notice it too much. But I love the way that that looks visually. Yellow Jacket, when he shrinks and stuff, it's the exact same thing, except he's flying around and stuff, so it's a little bit different. Ant-Man learning to control the ants and stuff was definitely a cool scene, where he was training, you know, they have their montage, of course, the hero montage. He's learning how to fight. He's learning how to control the ants. He's learning how to shrink and grow at the perfect times. So that was definitely a fun montage. Definitely really funny, because you know, montages in like typical action movies, it's like, you know, they're just training and there's some music playing. And in any comedy movie, it's always the same thing, where they fail repeatedly. And I think it was well done. It was just like, it was funny just like in any other funny comedy movie when they do a montage. It's like he's failing a lot in the beginning, and it's definitely really funny. And it's of course a bit unique because he's growing and shrinking and stuff. Um, One of the things that's probably my favorite in the montage, I have to wait until like the spoiler video, but there's a lot of cool stuff in there. Like him with the training and the connection that he makes with Hank Pym as well as his daughter Hope. It's just really cool, and it's like, excuse me, it's just really nice, conversations, and it's just like, all right, we're gonna, train. I don't know how to do this stuff. You gotta train me. I kind of suck at this stuff. You gotta keep training me, and they kind of just work through it, and eventually, like any good, any typical film, they do end up making things work, and it was definitely really well done. Um, the villain I really did enjoy. I thought he was pretty cool. There was some issues. One of the main issues a lot of people had is that he seemed like he didn't have enough motivation. But personally, I thought it was really well done. I mean, it seemed like he went, above and beyond, out of nowhere. But for me, I thought it made perfect sense. It was like, he's, um, basically he was the apprentice of Hank Pym, and Hank Pym kind of treated him like crap a little bit. It was just like he did kind of what he did to his daughter. That's how the main villain and his daughter are kind of working together, um, at the same company. I mean, so they're working together, and it's like they kind of had the same experience where Hope was the daughter of Hank Pym, and he did the same thing to her as he did to the person he chose as his apprentice. And it's like he chose him, and they kind of chose each other. But it's like, he kind of abandoned us both, and that's why they had contempt for him. And it made perfect sense to me. It was like he was his father figure. Hank Pym was sort of the father figure to the villain of the movie, and it was just like, well, he kind of left him. Your dad's just like, your dad's there. He has all the answers. He's a super genius. He can help you do pretty much anything. And he's like, meh, I'm just gonna leave because I don't want to be around you anymore. So that it made perfect sense. And they have some stuff that once again, I don't want to give anything away that wasn't in spoilers. So there's a lot I'm going to be talking about in the spoiler video. But I thought he had great motivation from that alone. And then there was some other stuff that kind of enhanced that. That seemed like it came out of nowhere, but if you kind of think about it, it does make sense. It was like one instance where it happens throughout the entire film. So when they talk about it, it's like, that doesn't actually make any sense at all. But you kind of have to think back on it in the film. It's like, oh, well, I guess that technically does count. But I really did enjoy this movie. I thought it had some great tie-ins with the Avengers. Actually, I guess I can talk about that because that was in one of the trailers. Hopefully you guys saw it. But Falcon is in this film. The scene that they actually show in the trailer, at least one of them, isn't in there. I don't think it's the Falcon scene. It was a different scene where he was talking about changing the Ant-Man name. They had like a couple of deleted scenes, and they always do that in every trailer you see pretty much ever. There's going to be one scene in there that's not in the final film because they just took it out for runtime or whatever. But Falcon is in this movie. He's like the main tie-in with the Avengers. I appreciated that mostly because Falcon hasn't really had anything. He's had Captain America, Winter Soldier, and that's pretty much it. Like, he was in Avengers 2, but he wasn't really in it. He was in like one scene there, and he didn't even get to have any part in the final battle, which I thought was crazy because they had War Machine at the end, which surprised me. I was like, okay, they're gonna bring it back up, and it's gonna be Falcon. And it was like, oh, no, it's War Machine. But it was only War Machine. It wasn't even Falcon and War Machine. I was like, well, that doesn't even really make sense. Like, I know what he's doing as far as looking for the Winter Soldier. But it's like, they're giant, island, basically, is floating in the sky, is going to destroy the planet. You kind of bring in everybody, but they only had War Machine. So I love the fact that we got to see Falcon. He was a good representative. It was good to see him have another role. And he's, of course, going to be a big part in the next Captain America movie. But it's good to see him, have these portions because he's basically just been introduced and he's got no real points in the films so far. So it was nice to see that he gets these little moments that really do focus on him. And he was, the Avengers tie-in for this one. So that was definitely cool when they met up. And, there's some other stuff with him throughout the film as well. But that was a cool little tie-in. It was like, here's the Avengers, here's Falcon, here's how they all kind of come together and find out about each other and stuff like that. There's also a trailer that they had where it kind of connects the Avengers 2 with Ant-Man, where they have a reporter actually talk to Scott, and he kind of, portion of it at least, the reporter's like, you're no Iron Man, or, stuff like that because of everything that happened, in the Avengers. So, that was definitely pretty cool. I love the tie-in. Like I said, the comedy was definitely great. Um, Michael Pena, of course, had like some of the funny stuff, and it's like he's the first friend that you meet, with from Scott Lang's kind of buddies, and he's just the funniest one. He was obviously the one that had like the main focus for like the jokes and stuff, and he has two very specific moments that I love where he tells stories about what's happening, and it's just the funniest thing. I think it's like the best way to do that. It made me think of Drunk History, that on Comedy Central, and I can't remember the actual YouTube channel that initially started that, but it made me think of that both times they showed it, and I loved it. It was so funny. But I thought this was a great movie. Definitely the second funniest one, right after Guardians. The action was definitely amazing. The visuals were really cool. Like when everything's tiny and stuff, and they zoom in, and everything looks huge. Incredibly well done, and I think I'm noticing that more because I'm using my camera, which is actually a good camera now. So I noticed that type of stuff a lot more than I normally would, but it just looked really cool. I thought it was a well-paced movie. I thought everything kind of just, it went along on the right beats. The montage didn't last too long. It wasn't too short. All the connections between the characters were genuine. With it being like a funny film, Scott is like serious at moments because of the stuff with his daughter, and then pretty much any other time he's just like, all right, let's get this done, and he's really jokey and funny and cocky, and I love that. I thought it was just really cool, and like he's learning to be Ant-Man and stuff, and it's like he has to do this, and it was just really well done. I thought every character had a great connection with each other, even when they didn't really like each other or they were enemies. It was just like it worked well. Everyone, I feel like, had like genuine chemistry when they were acting with each other. So I thought everything just kind of went well. So I would highly recommend this movie. Of course, odds are if you're watching this, you've already seen the movie anyway. But definitely let me know what you guys thought about it in the comment section below. Of course, I'm going to be doing a full spoiler section, all the special moments and stuff like that. History of Ant-Man, kind of what they gave us for the sort of new cinematic universe version of Hank Pym as Ant-Man and stuff like that. So I'll be talking about that, but like I said, I want to know what you guys thought about this film, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. Of course, with it being in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I definitely want to know what you guys want to see for the future of Ant-Man within this universe, because we're definitely going to get an Ant-Man 2 at some point, and if we don't get a full-on Ant-Man 2, we're definitely going to get some huge, portion of a movie. I would assume it would be the Avengers, but there's going to be some huge chunk of some film in the future really focused on Ant-Man and his history, and or I guess shouldn't say history, but what he's doing now. But I'm pretty sure we're going to get a second one, so I definitely want to know what you guys thought about the movie and what you guys want to see for the future of Ant-Man, based on what we've already gotten. Like the Ultron thing was initially supposed to be Hank Pym, but that didn't happen. It could still have technically happened, since we do have, like they could have done it at least. I guess they can't now because of the way that they did it in Avengers, where it was it was Tony Stark and Bruce Banner, but they could have still done it technically because they had old Hank Pym. It could have been like Tony found some old stuff, like, from this guy Hank Pym, who was apparently an old genius, which I think would have been really cool. It would have been a nice way to, I don't want to say shoehorn it in, but kind of fit it in where it made sense. And it's like, technically it was still Hank Pym, just Tony and Bruce are the ones that completed it, but they made it really definitive. So unfortunately that didn't take place, but there's still a lot that can be done with not only Scott Lang as Ant-Man, but still Hank Pym, who has the connections that he used to have and stuff like that. So I definitely want to know what you guys think, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.